Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So today, since Janmashtami is coming soon, I'll speak on the pastimes of Krishna, and we'll talk about not just the story but some important lesson that we can learn from the story. This is a story many of you may have heard of the first demon who attacked Krishna when he was barely out of his mother's lap. Can you guess which demon are we talking about?
Putana.
Putana, yes. So we'll talk about the principle of trust and its betrayal and its restoration based on the story of Putana. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is one of the prominent acharyas in our tradition, and he explains how every demon in Krishna Lila represents a misgiving, a weakness in our heart, and how that weakness can attack us and how that weakness can be overcome. That is what we can learn from the pastime. So quickly I'll tell the story, then we'll come to the point of the drama where this lesson will especially become significant. There are few things in the world which inspire a protective instinct as much as vulnerability. When we see anyone who is vulnerable, there's a natural part within us which wants to help. If somebody can't see and they're trying to cross a road and they're struggling, any half-decent person will want to assist them cross over. So anybody with vulnerability, then it attracts a desire to help, a desire to protect. And there is nothing as vulnerable as a newborn baby. All living beings, when they have their progeny, the progeny is weak and needs protection. But among all such living beings, it is the human beings whose progeny actually requires protection for the longest period of time. And this is meant to create a deep bond between the parents and the progeny. And one way that bond is created is that when the parents, or not just the parents, any caregiver, any adult see the vulnerability of a small baby, it attracts attention, it attracts affection. Even people who are normally very grave and even scary looking, if they come in front of a baby, they start playing. And you can see almost a dramatic transformation. What happened? So that small, tender, vulnerable disposition of a child attracts, and then it especially activates a protective instinct within us. And it requires an extraordinarily inhumane degree of cruelty to want to hurt a baby. Most of us will not knowingly want to hurt anyone. What to speak of a small, tender, vulnerable baby. And demons are such that their characteristics are often the opposite of human. Not just human, but humane characteristics. Demons are said to be evil. Now, evil, what does it mean? It essentially means to produce suffering for the sake of producing suffering. That is the very essence of evil. Sometimes suffering is just accidental. Say we are running towards something very urgent and we step on someone's feet. That's accidental. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Say there's so much crowd that we put our feet to somebody else. Sometimes it may be intentional but essential. Say for example, somebody has some infection and they have to be given an injection. So all these, you could say this kind of suffering is excusable. Either it is accidental, unavoidable, or intentional and unavoidable. Sometimes it is unavoidable and unintentional. Sometimes intentional and avoidable. But when suffering is intentional and avoidable, that is evil. And there is no need for that suffering. There's no purpose for that suffering, and still somebody causes suffering, then that intentional and avoidable suffering is evil. Having said that, the demons often like to cause this kind of suffering. And Putana represents this to an extreme degree because although she came to attack Krishna, attacking small babies was not a one-off activity for her. It was a habitual activity. That means she had desensitized herself. She had become so cold-hearted that just routinely she would kill babies. So when Krishna was born, Krishna, of course, is never born. He appears in the world. Like the sun appears in the sky, it's not the sun is created at that time. So similarly, Krishna appears in this world. At that time, there had been a prophecy before his birth that he, the eighth child of Devaki, would be the cause of the death of Kamsa. And therefore, Kamsa was determined to kill all the children of Devaki. Through an elaborate arrangement, Krishna was taken to Vrindavan and he survived. But Kamsa suspected that maybe the eighth child of Devaki is born somewhere, and I need to finish her. So then he told if he had to find someone who would kill Krishna. So he called Devaki. So he called Putana. And he called Putana and he told her that just go in the nearby vicinity and wherever you find small babies, just kill all of them. Just kill all of them. Even among demons, those demons who kill small babies are especially cruel. Demons are themselves cruel, but those who kill especially small babies, it's horrible. Sometimes when abortion is done, especially if it's a late-term abortion, then instead of the baby getting aborted, the baby is born. And then there are laws that once the baby comes out of the womb, you cannot abort the baby. So recently in New York, there's a debate going on that if a baby is born, still the baby can be aborted. And that caused outrage. No matter what, when the child is born, how can you kill? So even among people who might think that there's nothing wrong with abortion, but even they find it scandalously wrong that a child is born, how can you kill? So the point is that Putana had an especially cold-hearted nature, because of which she was deputed to kill babies. And it is not just one. They did not know where Krishna was, so just kill all the babies. So it's like, say, one child, say in the neighborhood where there are a lot of pet dogs. There's suspicion that one pet dog has a rabies, and somebody decides that kill all the dogs in this neighborhood. Not just the neighborhood, the whole city, vicinity, everywhere. It is disproportionate. Sometimes, say, suppose one terrorist is hidden in some big locality, and the police should find the terrorist and kill it. But if somebody decides that just blow up the whole locality. Hundreds, thousands of people who might be living in that part of the city, everybody killed. So this was the ruthlessness of Kamsa in planning, and it was in executing Putana. Now when Putana came to Vrindavan, Vrindavan is a big area. Initially Krishna lived in a place called Gokul within Vrindavan. And when she came to Gokul, she decided to sneak in. And for sneaking in, she took on a form that would lower the guards of people. Generally speaking, whenever we see a stranger, there is some caution, maybe suspicion also. And sometimes it is good with good reason. We don't know a person is a stranger, we don't know what their intentions are. Of course, you could say that even people whom we know, we don't know what their intentions are. But over a period of time, when we live with them for a long time, or are familiar with them for some time, then we can figure out their intentions to some extent. But strangers, we have our guard initially. So now, the way to, if that stranger has something attractive, then our guard gets lowered a little bit. Say, if we are suspicious that somebody is going to come to rob money from us, and then if that person comes in a car that is bigger than ours, you might think, this person, they already have so much. They were unlikely to rob. Of course, some thieves might temporarily get a big car just to lower our guard. So, but the point is, whenever anybody has something which is attractive, something which is impressive, something which is captivating, then that lowers our guard. Say, for example, somebody comes and starts speaking very sweetly, wisely. Oh, this seems to be like a learned person. Then that also lowers our guard. Maybe they know what they're speaking. So similarly, Putana, when she wanted to come in, she wanted to lower the guard of the Vrajvasis. So she took on a very attractive form. And this attractive form was such that it attracted everyone. The female form has two broad things. It actually applies to everyone. But there is the sexual aspect, there is the maternal aspect. So her form was so attractive that the men who saw her, so beautiful, they thought that, is she some Apsara from the heavens? And they were captivated by her. But because she looked so celestially beautiful, nobody suspected her of any evil intentions. And then as she came into the center of Gokul, then the women saw her. And she looked attractive. But for them, for Yashoda and Devaki, Yashoda and Rohini and others, they saw in her maternal beauty. So she had whoever might have a raised guard, she brought the guard down for offering her breast milk. So now in many traditional cultures, in today's culture, many times even the mother doesn't want to give her breast milk to the child. They want to replace and have some artificial milk. But in traditional cultures, often there was the idea that if a baby drinks the breast milk from many mothers, many women, then that will nourish the baby even more. Because the nutrients from many different mothers will enter into that baby. So it was a sign of maternal affection for women to nurse, for a baby to be nursed by multiple women, or for a woman to nurse multiple babies. So Yashoda was there, and she was the mother of Krishna, and she had abundant breast milk. But when Putana came, she was so attractive in such a maternally affectionate way that Rohini and Yashoda, their guards got lowered. And right in front of them, she came to Krishna. And while they were all watching, they were so charmed. So charmed that they just didn't think of this completely strange woman, because she was just so attractive that her strangeness didn't register them. And some of them thought that maybe, oh, this is a celestial damsel, is she the goddess of fortune? So who is she? And they just let her come inside. And when she came inside, right up to Krishna, and she wanted to feed Krishna. And she picked Krishna up. Now as she came near Krishna, Krishna closed his eyes. Krishna can see us, not just our appearance, but also our inner world, our substance. So Krishna could see her dark heart, and he just didn't want to see it. For all of us, if we are given an inner torchlight to look inside us, most of us would turn the torchlight away, because there is a lot of darkness within us. Of course, there is a light of divinity within us. At the core of our being, there is a soul, it's a part of God, which is godly. But surrounding that soul, there's a lot of darkness, and you would not want to see it. The darkness is quite ugly, quite unbearable at times. There is anger, there is greed, there is envy, there is lust. There are so many dark things in our heart. Now, in some people, those dark things are immediately evident. But most people conceal those dark things within their hearts. So Krishna could see her dark intentions, and Krishna closed his eyes. Now, normally, if we consider, if we see something new, it's interesting, Krishna's reaction was actually the opposite of the reaction of everyone else. She was so beautiful that everybody was irresistibly captivated by her. And everybody was just looking at her wherever she was going. But in Krishna's case, Krishna was not at all captivated by her. And Krishna closed his eyes. Now generally, when do we close our eyes? Multiple possibilities. One is that, say, when we're tired, we just want to sleep. Second is when we are very fearful. We don't know what, we just seen something terrible and we just don't want to see it. So close their eyes. Or sometimes just feel very comfortable and just relax. So in this case, Krishna didn't want to see what was happening. Now he did not just want to see because her heart was so ugly. When Putana saw this, he started thinking, now she was a demoness, and as a demoness, she sometimes had to fight with others. So she could assess the strength of others. And something within her said, this Krishna is not an ordinary boy. Maybe he is very powerful. But then, when she started thinking like this, so she had lowered the guard of everyone, but her own guard was rising up. Hey, this Krishna, who is he? Generally, you say somebody is a boxer. Now, some people who are boxers, they might be very hugely built. Some people might be very slim and wiry, but still they might have very strong muscles. And we might not see their muscles, we not even see their size, but when they start fighting, there's so much strength. So now if somebody is trained as a fighter, then just by the way the other person moves, they can, this person is, if a fighter has to say fight with 5 people, he can make out, these 4 are not tough, but this is a tough guy. So they can make out, they can assess the strength. If any fighter has survived, they have the capacity to assess strength. So something within her said, this Krishna is dangerous. So Krishna closed his eyes and he made her lower the guard. He thought, this is just an ordinary baby. He's gone to sleep. And then she picked him up. And when she picked him up, at that time, she, in front of everyone, just offered him her breast milk. And Krishna started drinking. And he kept drinking. And he kept drinking. And her plan had been extremely devious. Generally, if somebody wants to, say, kill someone, they have to carry some weapon. But she had not brought any weapons with her. But what she had done was, she had smeared her breast with poison. And her plan was, Krishna will drink the milk and Krishna will eat the poison. And the poison will kill him. And she had put a extremely virulent poison abundantly on her breast. And Krishna, small children don't have any capacity to doubt. If they started doubting, then they would not survive. So we need to trust. We cannot function without trusting in life. But sometimes our trust is betrayed. And then naivety in trusting is bad because we will be betrayed. But cynicism, where there's complete inability to trust, that is also bad. So trusting is a strength. But we also need intelligence to be able to discern whom to trust, whom not to trust. So children are born with that innate capacity to trust. As babies. So, and when somebody is so vulnerable and so trusting, at that time to betray that person, to attack that person is especially vicious. So she planned to have Krishna die by that poison. Now Krishna consumed that poison and consumed the milk, but he was completely unaffected. Even when God is a small baby, he is not small. Sometimes people think God's greatness must be that, hey, how can a small baby be God? God must be very great. See, God's greatness is such that even in his smallness, he can contain his greatness. He doesn't have to be physically great. He can be small and yet he can be great. So his greatness is not a physical attribute. Some people are very tall. Now for others, oh, you're so tall, that's impressive. But those people are tall, they're stuck with their tallness. If there's a low door, then they can't go as easily as everyone else can. But God is the strongest, God is the biggest, but he's not stuck with his bigness. He can be as small as he wants and still he can manifest all the strength that he wants through that. So Krishna, although he appeared vulnerable as a small baby, he was invulnerable to that poison. And then he kept sucking. And then he started sucking her life air away. And she was shocked. He had to push the child away. But Krishna had held on so tightly that she started screaming, pushing now. She's a powerful demoness. Although she had taken on the attractive form of a woman, but still the power was there. She pushed and pushed. And yet Krishna would not let go. Krishna just held on tightly. And then, for all the demons, whenever they assume a form, they invest some of their mystic powers to maintain that form. And then, when they're on the verge of death, then all their power gets concentrated on self-defense. And in the mystic power that they had invested in maintaining that garb, that form, that is dissipated. And that's why as those are about to die, their natural form comes out. So Putana was a huge, hideous demoness. And she tried to run away from the village to try to get rid of Krishna, pushing him away. I can't physically push him away, let me run, maybe he will fall off. just ran as desperately as she could. Now Krishna could have ended her life at that time itself. But because she had assumed a big form, if she had crashed down in the village itself, she would have damaged Vrindavan. So Krishna allowed her to run. And run and run. She ran out of the village, and then finally Krishna sucked out her life air. And this huge demoness who could so effortlessly have killed a baby was killed by that baby. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Putana represents a misleading teacher. A misleading teacher, a false guru. What is the rationale for this correlation? A teacher is someone whom we trust. And if a teacher misleads, then they are abusing a sacred trust. The bond of sacred trust between a teacher and a student is the basis for education and the furtherance of life. And to misuse, to abuse that sacred bond is heinous. So what Putana did was, she was similarly abusing another sacred bond. It is the bond of a mother and a child. Just as the teacher gives the milk of education for the student to grow intellectually, grow in mind, grow in intelligence, grow in future prospects. Similarly, mother gives milk, which enables the baby to grow. And that if the teacher abuses that, then it's grievous. So what Bhaktivinoda Thakur does is, there are specific incidents with specific characteristics which are manifested by the demons. Now the kind of specific incidents that may happen that happen in Krishna's life may not happen in our life. But rather than thinking of these stories simply as some ancient stories from long time, from distant past, these stories represent some universal archetypes, some universal patterns that are repeated. So he takes those specific incidents and he expands to them so that they become relevant to all of us. So for most of us, we won't face a situation like Krishna faced with Putana specifically. But the whole idea of a sacred bond of trust being misused is something which we see so often in today's world. So with respect to false teachers, the idea is that in the world, actually, the world is so peculiarly designed that it is very easy to fool people. And it is very difficult to convince them that they have been fooled. So, most people, even after they've been fooled, they live in denial. No, that doesn't happen. So, what happens is, to be fooled is bad enough, but to be exposed as a fool is much worse. So, if we buy something, say it's $50, but we paid $500 for it. Now, if we realize it, we'll be very angry. How did I get cheated like this? But if somebody points out, we'll try to defend. No, actually $500. It's very special. No, what you have is ordinary. What I have is special. So, what happens is that to convince people that way that they have been fooled. To fool people is easier than to convince people that they have been fooled. So because of this, sometimes when teachers, they teach, if they teach something wrong, then they are betraying the trust. And for those who have been misled, to even understand that we have been misled, it takes a long time. And thus they stay deluded. So just as Yashoda, she would nourish Krishna with her milk, and not just with her milk, but with her love. So when that nourishment is given, there is the external or physical component, that is milk, but there is also the internal component, that is love. So what keeps all sacred bonds together is not just the external transaction that happens. The mother gives milk, but through the milk, the mother and the child get bonded. The mother's love flows to the child through the milk, and that's what makes the bond real. So similarly, the Bhagavatam says, when a teacher is teaching, the teacher should be snigdha, should be affectionate to the students, should be concerned about the students. If the teacher is thinking, how much money can I get from whom? Of course, the teacher may be earning the livelihood, and that's fine. When the teacher becomes very calculative, then the teacher will become exploitative, become discriminating. Oh, this person can give more, this person can give less. And that way, that sacred bond gets abused. Now Krishna, he was not taken in by Putana's deceptiveness, although everybody else was taken in. So that same Krishna is present in our hearts. And if we connect with Krishna, because in the world, by appearance, it's very difficult to know who is trustworthy and who isn't trustworthy. There was a famous atheist who was asked, do you believe in hell? No. The questioner thought that obviously the answer would be no. If he's atheist, he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in the opposite of where God goes. That's where the godless go. Is hell. So of course I believe in hell. Oh really? So what is your conception of hell? He said, hell means other people. So he had so many bad experiences with people. He said, people are trouble. People are hell. It's an extremely cynical view of people and of relationships. But in this case, we cannot afford to be that cynical. But we cannot afford to be naive also. So if we get the presence of Krishna in our heart, just as Krishna saw through the facade of everyone, through the facade that nobody else could see through. So similarly, Krishna will give us pointers from within. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in 10:10, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajitam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. He says, I will give you the intelligence. Yena mam upayanti te, by which you can come to me. Now this is very significant. Krishna is not saying here, I will give you the intelligence by which you will solve all your problems. He said, I will give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. That means that sometimes as souls who are living in the material world, as people who are living in today's world, we will also encounter deceptive people. And Krishna is not necessarily saying that I will solve your problems or I'll give you the intelligence by which all your problems will be solved. That means sometimes we might face a problem and Krishna can give us the intelligence by which we solve the problem. We may solve the problem. Sometimes we might meet some untrustworthy person and we might get some warnings. No, don't trust this person. Just keep a distance from them. Sometimes it might be that some people might be just such smooth talkers that even we might be misled by them. But Krishna says, either way, whether you find somebody trustworthy or you encounter somebody untrustworthy, I will give you the intelligence by which you will come to me. Some people in our lives, they very lovingly lead us toward God. Some people kick us toward God. So sometimes when we meet trustworthy, loving people, we feel inspired. Our faith in the goodness of humanity, in the goodness of existence, the goodness of God increases by interacting with such people. But sometimes our faith can be shaken because people can be so terrible at times. But if we see that through both, if we try to be devotionally connected, then we'll be uplifted. In this world, there is no guarantee of protection from problems. But there is, Krishna provides the guarantee that he will help us learn through problems and evolve towards him. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. That if we become devoted to him, if we infuse Krishna's presence in our hearts, then gradually we become uplifted. And through every situation, through our encounters with trustworthy people, we will learn and we will grow. Through our encounters with untrustworthy people, we will learn and we will grow. And we need all kinds of lessons to evolve in our life journey. So that Krishna, who was present in Vrindavan and who is always present in our hearts, but is not manifest. If we practice his bhakti and start invoking his presence, then he will guide us to remove the confusion from within our hearts, the darkness within, which makes us blind to the realities outside. And he will enable us to march toward him. So I'll summarize. We can have some questions after that. So I spoke on this theme of how, about the demons in Krishna Lila. I spoke today about Putana. I started by talking about each demon represents a particular misgiving in the heart. And now Putana came, it requires cruelty to hurt anyone. It requires especial cruelty to hurt someone filled with vulnerability. And a baby, newborn baby, is the most vulnerable. But Putana, she not only was ready to kill one, but that was her full-time job, killing babies. And even among demons, there are especially high levels of cruelty with her. So she came and she got everyone to lower their guard. The men, she attracted her by her beauty, and the women, she attracted her by her maternal bearing. And she came in front of everyone to Krishna, and Krishna closed his eyes, so that he didn't want to see her evil disposition. And he also wanted her to lower her guard, because she started sensing this Krishna something extraordinary. And then Krishna, and she sucked Krishna, when she offered her milk for Krishna to suck, she found that Krishna sucked out her life also. And Krishna let her live till she could run far enough so that she would not cause any destruction in Vrindavan directly, in Gokula. So then we discussed that Bhakti Thakur said this represents the false teacher, the misleading teacher. Just as the mother offers milk which nourishes the child, the teacher offers knowledge, wisdom that nourishes the student. And to abuse that, just as Putana abused the milk which is meant to nourish to kill, similarly, sometimes some people might use the knowledge which is meant to educate to exploit, to manipulate. And that is a terrible betrayal of trust. And then I concluded by just as Krishna was able to see through the facade of Putana, when we invoke Krishna's presence in our heart, he will help us to see through appearances. And even if sometimes we are not able to see through appearances, Krishna says, I'll give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. Sometimes we learn, we are led toward Krishna by some people who are loving, and we are sometimes pushed toward Krishna, kicked toward Krishna by people who are the opposite of loving. But either way, by having Krishna manifest in our hearts, we will always evolve towards him. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So any questions or comments?
Well, thank you for such a enlightening class. It gives precious gems that we can apply in our life. The question I have, or a few questions I have, is so Putana was deputed by Kamsa to kill Krishna, and we know that Kamsa also killed many deities with 6 children. So are there any parallels between his sort of deception, I mean, not in that sense, but his cruelty and that of Putana's as one thing, and what does he represent as a demon? And my other question is, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they're solely attracted to Krishna, like they're not attracted to anything but Krishna. So how is it that they got attracted to Putana? Was it attracted to Yoga Maya or some other potency or something?
Okay. Good question. So first question is, are there any parallels between, say, Kamsa's killing of babies and Krishna's kill and Putana's killing? Yes and no. Both involve certain amount of brutality. It's horrible. But in the case of Putana, as I said, she was a khichari. The particular demoness who would go around killing babies. Whereas Kamsa, he had a particular fear that Devaki's son would kill me. So he was not going around killing all babies. Basically, he killed Devaki's children. But as long as his target was fixed, he was killing Devaki's children one by one. But then when he felt the target had slipped away, then he also became indiscriminate. And then he sent Putana. So you could look at it in 2 different ways. So suppose somebody hires a mercenary, hires somebody to kill somebody else. So now who is more brutal? Is it the murderer who is brutal or the person who hired the murderer who is brutal? You don't know. Sometimes it's the murderer who is brutal. And this person may say, I don't even want to see the dead body. Just do it and I'll give you the money, don't even talk to me about it afterwards. But sometimes it might be that the murderer is even more brutal. This is a small job, you do it for me. So Kamsa had his own cruelty. So you cannot say one particular case is more. So Kamsa definitely was cruel. And his cruelty was exhibited in different ways. He was ready to kill even his own sister. And that too, it's like you say, there is sin square and there is sin cube. So to kill a woman, that's bad enough. To kill one's own sister is worse. And to kill one's own sister on the day of her wedding, that is a day of such a great joy and sanctity. Do that. So that is not sin square, but sin cube. So he was ready to do that. So in that sense, his cruelty is also no less. And specifically his killing of babies was because he felt that they were an immediate threat to him. Whereas Putana's killing was just because that was her nature, that was her job, that was what she did. So it's not exactly like a linear scale comparison, but we can look at the context and see that both of them are cruel. Okay. Now, how were the Vrajavasis attracted to Putana and they only attracted to Krishna? Yes, sometimes we have this idea that to spiritualize ourselves is not to dehumanize ourselves. Even when we become spiritual, we still remain human beings. So to spiritualize ourselves is not to dehumanize ourselves. There are natural human emotions that come, but they don't control. They don't control someone. Now, for the Vrajavasis specifically, see, the scripture is such that when a particular point is to be emphasized, it is that point is highlighted and everything else is subordinate to it for highlighting that point. So, for example, in Narsimha Leela, it is said that everybody was terrified of Hiranyakashipu and everybody was bowing down to Hiranyakashipu. To the extent not only the gods but even the godly sages. Narad Muni was bowing down to Hiranyakashipu. And the only person who was ready to defy him, who was that? Prahlada. And then we see later on also that when Hiranyakashipu was killed, at that time the devatas offered prayers, even Brahmaji offered prayer. But the Lord was not pacified by anyone except Prahlad. It said even Lakshmi Devi, she came there, but she said, I have not seen anyone like him like this. So what is going on over here? So the point is that in this particular pastime, so is Prahlad more glorious than Lakshmi Devi? Is Prahlad more glorious than his guru, Narad Muni? No, not like that. But in this particular Leela, the glory of Prahlad is highlighted. And for that purpose, everything is orchestrated in such a way that his glory comes out. So every Leela has a particular purpose. And whenever anyone behaves in a particular way, within a particular pastime, it is often orchestrated to highlight the purpose of that pastime. So in the case of Krishna Leela, in this particular pastime, the point to highlight here was that Putana's deceptiveness. The Putana's deceptiveness was such that she could attract anyone and everyone. But she couldn't deceive Krishna. So to highlight that point, the Brajavasis also appear to be deluded. And they appear to be attracted. Required for Krishna Leela is done in Vrindavan. So we can say even the Gopas, when later on Aghasur's pastime comes up, the Gopas are with Krishna. But still they say, oh, this Aghasur seems to be like a nice playing place. They are not sure whether it's actual snake or it's not. They think maybe it's not an actual snake. It's a nice playing place, let's go inside it. So now if they are there with Krishna, why should they get attracted to anyone else, anything else? Somehow, just because this is male and female, so I think this is objectionable. Whereas the Gopas getting attracted to a snake for a play field, we feel that's not object, that's just playful. But the point is that any kind of attraction, if somebody is fully attracted to Krishna, why would they get attracted to anything else? But the point is, it's not that Krishna delights in everybody getting only attracted to him. Krishna delights in the reciprocation of love. And whatever is required for the reciprocation of love, that Krishna does that. So when Mother Yashoda is feeding Krishna milk and she's feeding Krishna her breast milk, but she sees the milk on the stove overflowing. She puts Krishna aside and she goes there. Now is the milk more valuable than Krishna? No, at that time, for the furtherance of this pastime, Krishna being deprived and thereby Krishna getting angry, that's what is required. And Mother Yashoda, she's attracted to that thing. But after that is also the service attitude. Oh, I have to feed this milk to Krishna. But the point is that it's not that in Brajalila, everyone will be constantly, equally, exclusively attracted to Krishna. Then maybe for the purpose of Leela, they get attracted to certain other things, temporarily. So there is temporary attraction to something else, but there is overall attraction only to Krishna. We see Sita was with Ram, but Sita was attracted to a deer. Through that the Leela went on, but if she had been like she was so casually attracted, but she was attracted to a deer, but she was not attracted to Ravan when Ravan propositioned her. So there are, for the purpose of pastimes, even great characters may act in ways that may not seem devotional. But it's all for the purpose of furthering the devotional Leela of the Lord. Okay. Thank you. Any other question? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. So many of the gems that you've given us, as Prabhu mentioned, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, when we read it, it's not obvious. Like, don't judge the book by the cover where Krishna is looking inside, and how Putana ran away so that people don't get impacted by her, height and things like that. So my question is with regard to this Akashvani, the divine voice that came twice in the pastime, and both times I think he was called as fool. Now, is that common? And also, is the reason for that, is it because of the curse of the 6 sons of Marichi to be born as sons of Kalanemi, and Kalanemi to become Kamsa, so that they get killed quickly? Because if that Akashvani didn't come, still Krishna would have been born and they would have been alive. So is that to get them to go back to their heavenly kingdom, and also some of the other children to be killed by Putana and others so that they go back? Is there a
Okay.
reason?
Yeah. So, is the Akashvani common? And what is the purpose of that Akashvani? Without it, also Krishna could have been born. Yeah. It's not so easy to isolate one particular incident from a chain of incidents, and to assess what would have been the impact of this. Oh, if this had not happened this way, if that had not happened that way. There is a whole they call history and contra history or alternative history. Only, if in this war this person had, instead of attacking here, had attacked here, what would have happened? Maybe more familiar to us is contra cricket history. Say, if India recently lost in the semi-finals in the World Cup, and so many people become self-appointed commentators. Only if this batsman had come early, only if this bowler had bowled like this, only if this person had come before. So now, would that have changed? Well, maybe we don't know. Some other batsman comes before, but that batsman also gets out. Who knows? So it's difficult to isolate a particular element from a whole narrative. But still, broadly, we can see a couple of things. That is the celestial voice common? Well, you could say it's not unheard of. It's not that it happens every day, but we see in the first canto also, Narad Muni hears a voice when he's been performing. He's a Narada boy, and he's performing tapas. He's performing austerity. He sees the Lord. He's delighted on seeing the Lord, but then the Lord disappears. And then after that, he hears a voice that, because you are impure at heart and incomplete in service, you cannot see me now. But this glimpse you have been given so that you can long for me, and your longing for me will free you from all other longings, and then you can come to me. Ultimately, you'll attain me ultimately. So we see that, but we don't see that very common. Basically, the idea is that this is the terrestrial realm, the celestial realm, and interaction between the terrestrial and the celestial realms do happen. The earthly and heavenly realms do happen. They're not uncommon. Devatas sometimes appear on the earth, sometimes in yajnas, sometimes at the other times, sometimes say Arjuna goes to the heavens. So the specific modes of interaction between the terrestrial and celestial may vary. And in each context, it may be for a particular purpose. When Ram is fighting with Ravan, toward the end, Indra sends his own chariot and charioteer. It is Indra only who has, in a sense, who has gone to Brahma, and through that Vishnu has been invoked and Ram has descended. So that has been earlier done already, but specifically in a visible way, that intervention happens just before the final war. So celestial terrestrial interactions do happen. In the form of Akashvani, they are not that common. Now in this particular case, as rightly pointed out, what all does it serve? Yes, it does serve to accelerate, to dramatize and accelerate the appearance of Krishna. So basically, now Krishna could have come and killed Kamsa, but how would it could just have appeared to be just killing someone. The person's demoniac nature, if it had not come out, then Krishna's killing him wouldn't have been justified. So normally, in ordinary situations, anybody can behave like a nice person. But it is when we are provoked, what do we do? All of us, even when we are provoked, we might deviate from our normal behavior. Someone might be a very gentle, nice person. When they get angry, they become like a different person. But all of us, even within our anger, have limits. Say, some of us, even when we get angry, we might never speak certain foul words. Certain bad words we will never speak. Or no matter how much angry we get, we might not take some physical weapon to hit someone. So we all have our limits. But some people have no limits. And their normal behavior and their provoked behavior are so different that somebody who has not seen their provoked behavior will not be able to believe that this person can behave like this. So then for the world to know the extent to which they can go when they are provoked, sometimes they need to be provoked. So Krishna does this very often, or Krishna makes that arrangement through various people for that to happen. So Kamsa's cruelty becomes visible to the world when the Akashvani comes, and then his behavior alters radically. The same sister whom he is very affectionately carrying as the charioteer in his chariot, he suddenly turns to kill her immediately. That's the extent of his evil disposition which comes out. So at one level we could say that the Akashvani happened just to expose to the world how demoniac Kamsa is. And then thereafter, as Kamsa killed all the previous babies, and it is brutal, but that was the way also those babies got liberated, got delivered from being born here on the earth quickly and leaving. And as you said, there's a whole story behind that. So we could say there are multiple. Generally, see, the idea is for one incident, you could find explanations at various different levels. Say, if I am speaking right now to you and you can't hear what I'm speaking, you could say that is because maybe this volume is low. You could sometimes say that my speaking volume is low. Or you could say maybe your hearing has gone down. Or maybe you could say the acoustics of this room are bad. So you could have various explanations. So generally we go toward the most obvious explanation, the most immediate explanation, as long as it makes sense. So we could go to various levels, and other explanations can also be true. So in this case, as you rightly said, the explanation about those 6 children are also true. But the immediate context is that Akashvani, that heavenly voice actually revealed Kamsa's hellish side. Okay, thank you. Yes.
My question is, like, mother, Putana was given the position of her mother since she fed the breast milk to Lord Krishna. So my question is this something because of her past deeds, like it was destined to be? Or was it like if somebody comes to Lord Krishna knowingly or unknowingly and he delivers everyone?
Okay, yeah. This part of the pastime I'm going to speak another class in future. How Krishna delivered Putana. But still, let's mention this briefly. So your question is that was it destiny that she became Krishna's mother? She was delivered in the spiritual world, or was it because for any reason she comes? If somebody comes to Krishna and offers something to him they will be delivered. Definitely, it's not destiny. Destiny, if generally we have this idea of what is destiny. Destiny basically is, you could say, the kind of situations that befall us in our life. How we respond to those situations is up to us. And sometimes we also use the word destiny in another sense, that somebody was destined for greatness. Somebody is a small child, is a mathematical prodigy. Then he's fulfilled his destiny. He's become a great mathematician. So we use it in that different sense also, that what somebody is meant to achieve. So was Putana meant to achieve Krishna? No. In this case, it was Krishna's extraordinary mercy Now, is it true that anybody who approaches Krishna for any purpose they get purified? Yeah, that is true. It is said that Gopyah kamat bhayat kamso dveshat chaidyadayo nrupaha. So that different people come to Krishna for different reasons, and because they become personally absorbed in Krishna, they become purified by that absorption. Now, in the case of Putana, so for example, Kamsa was constantly absorbed in Krishna out of fear. Oh, well, comes Krishna will come and kill me. Krishna will come and kill me. So it is described he was so absorbed that at night, when he would be lying down and his wife would come near him, hey, Krishna has come. So he would not see his wife, he would see Krishna. That was the level of absorption. And similarly, the Shishupala also was absorbed in envy. There is no description specifically that Putana was absorbed like that in Krishna. So different characters illustrate different principles of bhakti, or different principles of life. So when Kamsa is eventually delivered, or when Shishupal is delivered, that illustrates the principle of the fruit of absorption. That if one is anyway absorbed in Krishna, they will be elevated. It is not just approaching Krishna. Approaching Krishna is the beginning. It is absorption in Krishna. So it is, they were absorbed in Krishna, so they were elevated and liberated. In the case of Putana, there is no description that she was that absorbed in Krishna constantly. She was just deputed by Kamsa to kill Krishna. So in the case of Kamsa, in the case of Putana, her deliverance is in demonstration not so much of the potency of absorption as the potency of Krishna's mercy, Krishna's extraordinary reciprocation. So there is a word called causeless mercy. Now, what does causeless mercy mean? It means that the cause is too less for the mercy. There is a cause, but normally we have reciprocation. Say if person A gives somebody $100, then they give them some product which is $100. So that is equal dealing. Mercy means that it's completely disproportionate. Something which we don't deserve, we are given. So causeless mercy doesn't mean that there is absolutely no cause. There is a cause, but there is no proportionality. The cause is very little, and the result, what is given, is very, very large. So in the case of Putana, Krishna saw, there is the spiritual principle and there is a material principle. And both can work in parallel. Say, for example, if somebody has got diabetes and they see some gulab jamun and it's prasad. Oh, this is prasad. How can I refuse it? And they take the prasad. Now you could say prasad always purifies. Yes, it always purifies. But the purification is at the spiritual level. At the material level, if somebody has diabetes, and there will be a result at the material level, isn't it? So if you wanted purification only, then you could have taken rice and chapati also. Why did you take gulab jamun specifically? So if you're taking it for purification, then that particular thing which we took, that might be inappropriate because it has some effect at the material level also. So in the case of Putana coming toward Krishna, at that time, that the spiritual level, because she had this spark of maternal affection, or at least maternal action that she did. So because of that, Krishna appreciated that. At least she's come with she's done some maternal actions. And it's described that she was in her previous life Kurtamala, and she was the sister of Bali Maharaj. And when she saw Vamana at that small time, so she was so happy to see this nice boy. and she had some maternal affection toward her. But then immediately that maternal affection changed. When she saw that Vaman Dev has taken everything away from Bali Maharaj, she became very angry with him. So from that previous life also, for this life also, there was a small amount of positive action or positive intention, whichever way you want to look at it. And Krishna appreciated that. But this was at the spiritual level. At a spiritual level, Krishna took that small, oh, you have a desire, you have acted as if you want to give milk to me. I will give you the facility to forever offer milk to me. That was at the spiritual level. But at the material level, because she acted in terms of a murderess, so she got the result at the material level. The material level, the result was that she tried to kill Krishna, and then the normal principle is if someone tries to assassinate you, kill you, then in self-defense you can kill that person. So she got the result at the material level because of her evil actions. But because those evil actions were done in a way that there was some maternal affection over there, so she was elevated. So it's Krishna's causeless mercy. It's not destiny in that case. There were some factors which had come from a previous life. But just those previous lives factors were not enough. It was Krishna's special mercy that led to her elevation. Okay. Thank you. So, yes, sir.
Actually, taking that example of looking at the Srimad Bhagavatam or pastimes and being able to extract more practical examples, how can we practice that more when we are reading those scriptures or pastimes? So like how can we try to seek that more often than just reading it for the sake of reading it?
Okay. So how can we learn to draw practical lessons from scripture? Of course, devotion is ultimately practical. So, but still, I understand your question. See, there are different ways in which we can approach scripture. Say some devotee might be a doctor. Prabhu is a doctor now. So now, if I come to Prabhu because I have got some disease, the way I approach him and the way he approaches me will be different. Say if I'm coming as a speaker. So we will have different kinds of interactions. So similarly, see, it's our purpose that determines our perspective. So we could approach scripture in different ways. Madhacharya talks about 3 levels of approaching the epics. It's primarily the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, but it applies to Bhagavatam also. He talks about this in Brahmasutra Bhashya, his commentary on the Bhagavatam and commentary on the Brahmasutra basically. So there he says you can approach scripture at the literal, ethical and metaphorical levels. So at the literal level, it's just the story. And we just hear the story and relish the story. And so this could be a very devotional approach to scripture. Where, just tell the story in a very sweet way and become absorbed in its sweetness. And that's wonderful if we can do that. There are times for that also. And then there is the ethical way. The ethical way is we approach scripture as a guide for our ethical decision making. And that means, okay, this character acted in this way, this character acted in that way. And we learn something from that. We have to be careful that we don't judge the characters as right or wrong. We only see those characters' actions as guides for our actions. Because they are great characters mostly in the scriptures. And we don't want to put ourselves in the morally superior position of judging them. But we want to learn from them. And then third would be the metaphorical, where certain characters can represent certain things. And this, all three, to do that and to gain something from that, it requires a certain amount of maturity and certain amount of expertise. Even the first literal, if somebody literally only repeats the story, after some time you might just get bored with it. I've heard it so many times. But somebody who can imbue it with rasa, with devotion, that expertise there, then even the story is the same. Sometimes some people recite in such sweetness that we love hearing it. Similarly, for ethical, if we ourselves are experienced and expert, then we can draw the right lessons from there. Generally, it's a big subject, but I'll try to explain as quickly as possible. That for learning anything from some incident that is quite different from the incident that we are going through, there is something called the ladder of abstraction. The ladder of abstraction basically means, if you consider a ladder, at the bottom of it is everything specific. At the bottom of it is something abstract. Now, generally, for any learning to happen, there has to be a combination of the specific, the concrete, and the abstract. Say, for example, if a news says that the population of polar bears in Alaska has gone down. Okay, that's some interesting information, but I'm not interested. Maybe I'm interested, I don't know. But then you say that indicates that global warming is for real. So now what has happened is a specific point, but from there is something more universal that is true. So if it's only specific, it's only entertaining. If it's only abstract, then it's too abstract. It doesn't engage us. So basically, whenever communication happens, it has to be a combination of the concrete and the abstract. So we go up and down the ladder of abstraction. So now with respect to applying things to our context, so it's like, say, the scriptures were spoken thousands of years ago. So they are at a particular level, particular context, particular time in history. That's the point of concrete, that's the bottom of the ladder of abstraction. So from there you come up, and then another ladder of abstraction brings us down to our level. And then we can understand. So for starting from this point, going to the top, and then coming down to the bottom on our side, we can broadly ask 3 questions. So whenever any particular thing happens, anything happens in scripture, what does this mean in its original context? So what does this mean in the original context? Then what is the context independent significance of this? So some particular action is there. What is the context independent principle underlying this? That will take us to the top of the ladder of abstraction. And then to come down to the bottom of the ladder of abstraction, okay, how does that context independent principle apply to me in my context? How does this context, so if we do these 3 things, what is the meaning of this in its original context? What is the context independent principle? And what is the contextual application of that principle in my context? Then we can draw some practical lessons from scripture. Say, I'm talking about the ladder of abstraction, and actually it's abstract right now. Let me give you some simple example to illustrate this. Say, we know that in Chaitanya Lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused to see the King Prataprutra. So that is an incident. Now we see Srila Prabhupada is probably the most prominent follower of Srila Prabhupada, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in today's times. But when Prabhupada was in America, and some of his followers in India told him that there's an opportunity to meet Indira Gandhi. Prabhupada cut down his America tour and went all the way to India to meet the head of the state. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very conscientious that the king was in Puri. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Puri. The king wanted to come to meet him. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused. And Prabhupada seems to have done exactly the opposite. He went to meet the head of state. So why is that? So we have to look at what is to make sense of this. What do we learn from this? What did that action mean in that context? So in that context, it meant that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, at least, that if people see a sannyasi hobnobbing with the king, they think, what is this? It's not detached. and it will spoil the reputation of sannyasi. And if sannyasi's reputation is spoiled, if people expect a renunciate to be renounced, if people see a renunciate is attached, then they will not want to hear from him. So then he felt that his capacity to teach anything spiritual will be impeded. So the point over there was, in that context, his meeting the king would have damaged his reputation. So what is the context independent principle? You come to the top of the ladder instruction is that we need to be conscious of people's perception. Not that we just let people's perception guide our actions alone, but we have to be aware. If somebody's reputation is spoiled, they cannot do that service. So we need to protect our reputation. Now, what will be the contextual application in today's world? In today's world, people will actually be quite impressed if a spiritual leader meets a head of state. Because at that time, the overall understanding was such that there is another world and that is the world we have to go to. So somebody who is pursuing that world, what are they doing with somebody who is trying to rule this world? So there was the understanding. There is another world and we have to go to that world. In today's idea, there is the idea of another world. Most people don't connect with it at all. So they think if somebody renounced this world, that person is living a worthless life. Oh, but somebody has renounced this world, that person is meeting with somebody who is ruling this world. Oh, then this renounced world person who is renounced must be having something special. So it will enhance the reputation today. So therefore, the actions are opposite, but the intention is the same. The intention is to facilitate one's service by shaping public perception in a way that is receptive for the service. So, of course, this is one example, but like that, if we move up and down the ladder of abstraction, then we can see what we can learn from specific incidents and specific stories also. Okay? So, thank you very much. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaura Premanande.